You know what I hate about playing from behind the most? The fact that sometimes in League, you have to actually encourage your teammates to keep going. I mean, in real life, when a tragedy befalls you, other people encourage you, saying, "Oh, it's gonna be okay. We'll be fine. We'll get through this." In League, you have to tell other people, like, "No, no, no. I will be fine. I will be fine. This tragedy has befallen me, but I will keep going. It's fine. It's fine. Just keep playing. Shut the fuck up." Hi there, my name's Donghua. Playing behind is a very difficult thing to do because you are at an inherent disadvantage. The strategies that you employ while playing behind, though, are actually pretty simple. Some people think that if you lose the laning phase, that means it's guaranteed that you're going to lose the game. While there's definitely a correlation between games lost and won based on how you do during the laning phase, it's not everything. In solo queue, people fuck up all the time. They throw, they buy wrong items, they don't cooperate with their other teammates. If you remember these three important things, you will have a better time surviving and capitalizing on your opponent's mistakes. Good players win when they're ahead, great players win when they're behind. But first, what is playing from behind like? Being behind in League, it's basically the same thing as being poor in real life. People look down on you, people shit talk you. When your jungler sees you in the street, he pretends that you don't exist and just keeps walking to his next camp. Poor people don't get great medical attention, so they are also more prone to cancer, just like people who fall behind in League. So here's three strategies that may help you when climbing that social economic ladder or that elo ladder. First is, how do I play when I'm behind? One word: adapt. Change something in your life and how you play. Most players, when they lose a kill or they get ganked or something happens to them, what do when they come back into the lane? They do the exact same fucking things. They keep farming the same way, they keep trading the same way, they keep overextending the same way, and they keep dying the same way. They do the exact same things, and somehow they expect a different outcome. You need to start changing your actions based on the environment around you. If you're poor, you can't just keep doing the same things and expect to suddenly get rich. You cut back on expenses, you walk to work, you abort the kid, you do something different, that's all I'm saying. If you keep doing the same shitty things, you're gonna stay shitty. Something stupid happened in your lane, your jungler fed, whatever the reason. I'm sure sometimes the reasons are legit, but you have to just accept it. Accept that these things happen. The man is keeping me down. The system is rigged. My jungler's racist against top laners. Whatever the reason is, I'm sure some of those reasons are legit. But you have to move past those things. You have to just accept them. You have to accept your circumstances and just try to climb. There are people who spend their time complaining why they're behind and people who actually try to come back from behind. Now, what are some ways that you can play to come back from behind? The most common way is, instead of trying to climb that social economic ladder yourself, you pin all your hopes and dreams on your children. You hold on to that shitty job. You get as much gold as you possibly can. You stay back, play passive, and hope that your team will carry you. If you fall behind and your team is still doing well, you just sit back, give up CS, give up the lane, and let your team carry you. It's called the faith strategy. What you're basically doing at that point is you're not trying to win the lane anymore. You're just trying to make sure that your opponent doesn't win his lane any harder. Now, when you give up CS in this strategy, how do you know which CS are safe to go for and which ones you should give up? Here is a good rule of thumb for what CS you should go for. A health potion is worth 50 gold, and it gives you 150 HP. So 2 minions are worth approximately 50 gold. So if you're going to lose 150 HP for 2 minions, it's not worth it. What's better is to wait at your tower and get farm when you can. But you still need to be in EXP range so you don't fall further and further behind. If you're against a champ that likes to all in on you, like Zed or Riven, these champions, you basically just don't want to go for any, because as soon as you walk up on them, they'll probably just all in you and you'll probably just die. Parents give up their hopes and dreams, and you need to give up your ambition of carrying, of hard carrying, so your team can carry you for you. Now, this is the most common strategy, and it is also the most safest strategy, but it's not correct in all situations. There are other things that you need to know about this strategy. Let's say that you've successfully played passive, that you've been playing passive very well, you're getting enough gold and EXP, and your lane opponent, he gets bored of you. He looks at you and says, I'm not going to get any further ahead from you. I'm not going to be able to kill you ever again because you're playing like a total pussy. So what am I going to do? As the winning laner, I'm going to adapt. Instead of staying in my lane where I'm not going to get any further ahead, I'm going to go into a different lane to try and get that lane ahead. He's going to start roaming. If he can't fuck up his own lane, he's going to fuck up someone else's. So remember to keep the river warded, remember to ping your Mias, remember to do all that stuff. But as soon as you know it's safe, you need to push. Just push the lane. Push, push, push. But you need to make sure that the wave hits the enemy tower. The reason you need it to hit the enemy tower is so that it resets and so that he can't freeze the wave on you. Because if he freezes it on you, you might not even be able to get EXP at that point. If you are able to push the wave to his tower, he is less likely to go for roams. And if you can keep your lane opponent in your lane as long as possible, that is the best scenario for playing from behind. Because even though he's ahead of you, he's not having any effect on the rest of the map. Even though he is stronger, he is having the same amount of relevance as you. The more you keep him busy, the more likely your team will be able to carry you. Now, when is this faith strategy not a good idea? Well, mainly in the situations when your team are not doing so great. If all 3 lanes are losing, then no one carries. You know, sometimes the kid you've been raising just doesn't live up to expectations. Sometimes a kid gets hooked on drugs. Sometimes a kid gets another kid pregnant. Sometimes your kid is just dumb like me. Sometimes your kids just aren't smart enough to carry you. So what do you do when your kids are unreliable to climb you up that ladder? This is when you start taking huge risks. Start roaming, start taking huge risks. If you have 3 lanes and all 3 of them are losing, you're not going to win the game. If you have 3 lanes and one of them is winning, you may have a chance. If you have 1 fed carry, you could still come back, but you can't come back if you have no fed carries. This strategy, I like to call it curing cancer, okay? Because when you cure cancer, radiation and chemotherapy, those aren't good for your body. They do a lot of damage to your body. But you're giving up something to stay alive in this game. It's not guaranteed and you're taking a lot of risks, but you could have a slight chance at beating the cancer. Now, the second question to ask yourself, what do I buy when I'm behind? The most common advice you hear when you're behind is to buy tank. If you fall behind, change your build and build tank instead. Now, adapting, I'm all for adapting. I love adapting. You obviously don't buy the same items while you're ahead and behind. That would make no sense. But there are certain items you just don't leave out of your build. Let's say I'm playing Rise and I lose an early kill to Riven. Now, do I just start stacking armor and say, fuck it, I'm not doing anything anymore? No. Rise has core items like Tear and Rod of Aegis that must be completed, otherwise he'll just be useless in teamfights. Part of the whole strategy of playing passive and just getting as much farm and EXP as you possibly can, you still need to be useful in teamfights. If you just continuously stack armor, you won't do anything in teamfights. You won't be a threat. At that point, it's basically a 4v5 if you're just full tank and no damage. If you're poor in real life, there are still basic things you need to purchase. Not buying tier on Rise, that's like not buying food or not drinking water. You have to buy just enough tank items so that you aren't able to be tower dove, but just enough core items so that you're still useful in a team fight. If you're playing a tank champion, obviously you just straight go tank because that's part of your core build. If you're playing AD carry or mid lane, where you're pretty much just always going damage, then you obviously don't really get that many tank items. So what do you do when you're behind as a mid laner or an AD carry? You buy alternative items. Instead of Death Cap, maybe get Abyssal Scepter. Instead of BF Sword, you get Doran's Blade. You're basically just budgeting your gold. Instead of Lay's chips, you go generic chips. Instead of Trojan, you go Planned Parenthood. Instead of Nikes, you go Chinese. And wait, Nikes are made in China too, aren't they? You go plastic bag. Get cheaper alternatives with earlier power spikes so that you're more useful earlier on. Last thing to remember while being behind, you have to remember that while you're playing from behind, you probably won't win the game. Generally, the team with the more winning lanes wins the game. If you won the same amount of games where you lost or won the laning phase, there would be no point to the laning phase. But just because you lost the laning phase doesn't mean you're completely out of the game. If you win just half of the games where you fall behind, you'll definitely do better when you're ahead, so you'll definitely climb. Simple.